You want to walk up to the bridge? No. Let me do my language.
All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles of liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Dag la dang war je pe dra no par je pe keg. Tharpa dang tam che kien pe bar du cho par je pa tam che ki so je pe. Ma nam ka dang nam pe sem chen tam che de wa dang den. Dug nao dang drone your du lana me pa yang dag par zog pe chang chu rin po che to par ja. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Long refuge prayer. All sentient beings, limitless as the sky, take refuge in the glorious kind Lama Vajrahara, the embodiment of the body, speech, and mind, qualities and activities of the Buddhas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, source of the 84,000 categories of the teaching, Lord of the Sagas. Did you want me to do the Tibetan as well?
It's up to you. You're the Umze tonight.
Okay. All sentient beings, limitless as the sky, take refuge in the glorious kind Lama Vajrahara, the embodiment of the body, speech, and mind, qualities and activities of the Buddhas, and the 10 directions and the 3 times, source of the 84,000 categories of the teaching and Lord of the Sanghas. Nam ke tha dang nyem pe sem chen tham che chok chu du sum ji. They shen sheg pa tham che ki. Kusung thu yon ten tren lei tam che ki no gwor gyor pa. Cho ki pung po tong drag ja chug sa she jung ne pag pe gi don tam che ken na dak. We take refuge in the kind root lama and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the kind root lama and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. Dren chen sa dang ju par che pe pao den lama dampa nam la kyab su chi o. Yedam kil korgi la sok nam la kyab su chi o. Sangye chodin de nam la kyab su chi o. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakinis and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Dampe cho nam la kyab su chi o. Pagpe ge dun nam la kyab su chi o. Pa wo kadro cho kyong sung me so yeshe ki chen dang den pa nam la kyab su chi o. Cultivating the mind of enlightenment. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta, apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Chang Chub Nying Por Chi Ki Bar Sangye Nam La Kab Su Chi Chodang Chang Chub Senpai So Gla Yang De Shen Kyab Su Chi Jetar Nong Gi De Sheki Chang Chub Tu Ni Ke Padang Chang Chub Senpai La Pa La De Da Rim Shen Ne Patar De Shendro La Pen Dong Dun Chang Chub Sim Ni Ke Ji Xing De Shen Du Ni La Pa La Rim Pa Shen Du La Par Ji. Short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chok Nam La, Changchu Bardu Dagni Kabsu Chi, Dagji Jen Sok Chi Pe So Nam Ki, Dro La Pin Chir Sangye Drog Par Shog. The four immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam ka dang yang pe sem chen tam che dewa dang de wei kyub dang den par jur chi. Dug na dang dug na gi gu dang dra war jur chi. Dug na me pe dewa dang mi dra war jur chi. Ne ring chak dang ni dang dra wei tang yom la ne par jur chi.
Okay, thank you. That's good for tonight. Thank you very much. So welcome everybody, and I know we'll be having some more people joining us a little bit later. A couple of people have said they have to be late tonight. But of course we're recording and everybody can join on YouTube later on. So we're continuing our discussion of the sutras. And so does anybody have any questions or comments about anything that we've talked about thus far? Okay, well then we'll continue where we left off. Last week we left off at 4.31. We recited those, we looked at those, the two accessing the eye of Buddha, the two accessing the authentic discerning awareness and accessing the trustworthy as a gateway to the light of the Dharma, or at least the purity of the eye of the Buddha. So the next one that we begin with tonight is 4.32, which I've called the attainments of the bodhisattva, the two attainments of bodhisattva. So the first one is number 103. Remember, we're counting the number of verses here. So this is verse number 103, and this is the attainment of Dharani is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it enables one to retain everything said by the Buddhas. So the attainment of Dharani is a gateway to the light of the Dharma. So the gateway of the Dharma, or the attainment of a Dharani is actually, Dharani is defined for us in the glossary, number 130. So if you have that handy, you might want to turn to that. Does anybody off the top of your head know what a Dharani is? Maybe you've seen it printed in a few of our texts where we recite a Dharani. So if you're looking at the glossary G.130, a Dharani is defined this way. It says, the term Dharani has the sense of something that holds or retains, and so it can refer to the special capacity of practitioners to memorize and recall detailed teachings. In other words, it's like a touchstone. You know, you hear something, you hear a certain verse, you hear a certain line or something, and it suddenly reminds you of something that's much longer, much more involved, and so on. So it holds that in there within the Dharani. So it's kind of like it's like a long mantra. This is the way I've known it to be, that it's a long mantra that has all the different visualizations involved in a particular practice in that Dharani. The mantra would be a short version of a Dharani. So then this definition continues. It says, it can also refer to a verbal expression of the teachings, an incantation, a spell, or a mnemonic formula that distills and holds essential points of the Dharma and is used by practitioners to attain mundane and supramundane goals. The same term is also used to denote texts that contain such formulas. So Dharani is a phrase, or could be a picture, could be a longer prayer that is reminding you of what might be a whole longer liturgy of a particular practice, of a particular set of instructions, something like that. Kunga has his hand up. Yes, Kunga.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that for me, that made me think about memorization practice and how helpful it's been for me over the years to memorize different sutras and short sutras and short prayers, and how, you know, over time, just being able to memorize them and recall those things helped me to gain a deeper understanding of those things, and how, you know, the importance of memorizing different texts and things, because you can call them up whenever you need them. You're not dependent on having your phone to look at or having your hands free, or, you know, if you're laying in bed, you can't sleep, you can recall to mind one of these memorizations, and it just helps to deepen your understanding. So that's what that made me think about. Thank you.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. Has anyone ever had a word or a phrase that has suddenly, you know, come into your mind? Either somebody spoke it or you thought of it yourself, and this whole, you know, this whole teaching unveils itself in your mind because of that one word. You know, that's the power of a mnemonic, something like that. Anybody have any other experience like that you'd like to share? Okay.
No,
Yes, Debbie.
yeah, I do want to say something. It was something I saw in anthropology. Cultures that have oral literatures have the ability to memorize days and days and days worth of text, unwritten text. If you just have an oral, it's actually shocking and almost unbelievable how the human mind is capable of doing that to the extent we would really, it is, it's like, it was, it's really surprising to people who would go, even here, listening to the story of Hiawatha, actually, which it will take days and nights, and you have to recite it, not just recite it accurately, you have to know it all, and you have to go through the these things in depth. Another example is a lot of the stories that people talk about in native cultures here, coyote stories, a raven stealing the sun or something like that. And it is a story, but it encodes layers and layers and layers of philosophy behind it and experience. And that's why humans do that. We do that, just what you said. We'll have something, a story or whatever, and you are pinning it to an amazing depth of understanding things.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Yes. And, myself, I didn't really get into the Dharma until I was into my 50s. I'd been familiar with the Buddha teachings, and I had read a number of books beforehand, but I really didn't get into the Dharma teachings and the practices going to a Dharma center until I was in my 50s. And, I just felt compelled to want to memorize the different prayers and then the different practices and so on. And, I got a pretty good memory, and I think that I'm able to sustain that through training myself to continue to memorize these things. And that's one of the things they talk about, as to safeguard ourselves from dementia and so on, is actively, challenging the mind in many different ways, and memorization is a very good way to do that. And plus you get the added benefit of being able to recognize, the spiritual world through these Buddhist practices and so on. But it doesn't have to be limited to that. If you want to learn Native American culture or Christian culture or whatever, any of those would be equally very, very good, because they're all reminding you of something that's very important to ourselves, which is our spirituality. So going back to this 103, this verse 103, it says, the attainment of Dharani is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it enables one to retain everything said by the Buddha. Everything said by the Buddha. So all these teachings, everything we've learned over the years, and that you could learn that you haven't been exposed to, all were teachings of the Buddha. So at least it's pointing us to the direction of the Buddha. So if we haven't memorized every one of these things, at least we've memorized the point that all this comes from the Buddha, and I can go to the sutras, I can go to these practices and actually engage in the benefits that they bring to us. So this is the attainment of the Dharani, is a gateway to the light of the Dharma. The second one, 104, is the attainment of confidence is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it enables one to satisfy all sentient beings by offering them clear explanations. So this is something that I've mentioned many times, that by doing these practices, by doing these prayers, by reading and studying and everything, it gives us confidence that we can do these things. And especially for those of us who have had careers and are retired and so on, and we think, oh, well, there's no more learning, I don't have to go through any more stuff, and we're a little reticent to want to do anything because we think we can't do it. But when we engage and we do more of it, we see that leads to a clearer understanding of the meaning of what all this is. So the acceptance of the attainment of the confidence is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, the attainment of the confidence. So that's what it does. It gives us confidence to satisfy ourselves by offering them clear explanations. And if we're not sure about things, it gives us cause to start looking things up, to do research. And for myself, that's a great joy. You know, I've got a lot of books and everything, and I love to cross-reference them. And I say, oh, I remember reading that in such and such a book. And I dig that out and go to the index or the table of contents, and I find, you know, where that particular item is referenced, and I cross-reference them. And I see how similar things can be couched in different situations depending on the prayers or the practices and so on, and who was reciting it at what time of their lives and at what time of the life of the Dharma being taught. Sometimes you'll read something that came from the year 1530 that is a harmonic of something that was taught in the year 680. You know, so to be able to see and piece these things together is very, very interesting. So there's a historical, intellectual value to all this as well. So all this gives confidence in being able to do this, is my point. So the attainment, these are the two attainments of bodhisattvas, to have the recall of the Dharani, and to have the confidence of learning the meanings of what it all relates to, how we can piece it all together for ourselves. Anybody got any comment about any of this?
It's a reminder. You know, again, this document is a teaching document. It was, you know, has gathered together a group of people that he's bringing to Earth to be teachers. And that's something then it could be. It's nice to hear stuff like that. Certainly, I don't, you know, I always, like, I guess we all feel like we're still figuring stuff out. But I don't think of myself nearly as much of a teacher than a student. So it's a good reminder.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, so then let's move on to the next group, which is 4.33. And these I've called the two acceptances of bodhisattvas. What it is that we have to accept. You know, there's certain things that maybe we don't understand. We'll understand them in time, but for now we have to accept them. So 4.33, the first one is verse number 105, and it says, acceptance of the concordant Dharma is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to being in accord with the entirety of the Buddha Dharma. So going back, it says acceptance of the concordant Dharma. So concordant means harmonious, the harmonious Dharma. So of course, this is the Dharma of the Buddha. And we're learning it in pieces. You know, it's not like we're sitting one time and all this stuff is just flowing right into our mind stream, into our hearts or whatever. The wisdom is there, but the intellectualization of it takes time and so on. So the acceptance of the harmonious Dharma is a gateway. So by able to see that what this Dharma is explaining has layers to it, and has depth to it, has breadth to it, has a vibration to it, you know. And so sometimes it may seem very thin to us because there's no understanding. But as we progress along, that thinness gives way to if I can use a thickness to it, that we see, oh, there's many, many references to it. So we, by staying with it, exploring it, doing the research with it, we begin to have this concordant, harmonious Dharma, all these things blending together, becoming interconnected. You know, it's like a matrix, all interconnected with each other. So it says it leads to being in accord with the entirety of the Buddha Dharma. So, you can hear one thing, as it said in the prior group, the two attainments. It said there can be a mnemonic, a word or a phrase that can take you all of a sudden, can just take you out into your meditative mind, just through one word, just through one phrase, just through seeing one object. Maybe it's a picture of a Buddha or something like that, can just catapult you right into that state of mind, that stream of consciousness. So, this is so these are pieces of the Buddha Dharma. But if you become accomplished in this, it takes you to the whole entire Buddha Dharma. So then the next verse is verse 106, and it says, acceptance of the Dharma of non-arising is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to the attainment of prophecy. Now this one is a little bit dense. I had to do a little bit of thinking about this. I had to do a little bit of research on this to be able to properly understand it myself, and to be able to try and convey what I understand about it to other people. Does anybody have an idea of what non-arising means, the Dharma of non-arising?
That's usually talked about in terms of emptiness, right?
Yes. Non-creation, emptiness, the void. Konga, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think the idea that things are created from causes and conditions, and there's causes and conditions are constantly changing. So there's no thing that was really born from nothingness. Something already existed in some other form. And when something breaks down, like a human being dies, they don't cease to exist. They continue to exist in other forms. This idea of, that's what that non-arising means to me, that nothing is truly coming from nothing, and nothing is going to nothing. Thank you.
Yes, that's all variations on the theme. Yes, the birthlessness of the appearances of things, of phenomenal nature, and so on. So it says the acceptance of the Dharma of non-arising, not created, emptiness, is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to the attainment of prophecy. So what do you think that means, the attainment of prophecy? Konga?
Well, I think that, it has to do with thinking about what happens next, in the future. And so I don't think it has to do with predicting the future, like what we normally think of prophecy is. But I would think of it more along the lines of, I'm looking at this thing, it appears permanent, but it's going to become, it's made up of causes and conditions, and it's going to deteriorate, it's going to disperse over time, and something new will be created. Like that idea of prophecy, that that things are impermanent and things are constantly changing. I think that's what it has to do with, not being actually predict the future in a way like I know what's going to happen. Not specific, I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. Everything is impermanent. So I know that everything is changing. So I know that things are going to disperse over time. So I know that's going to happen in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So sometimes it's used to refer to, is that in this context to you, the prophecy of your enlightenment?
Yes. Yes, the prophecy of the enlightenment. And in the enlightenment, all things are revealed, all things are known as appearances. That's the enlightenment. We see the phenomenal nature as it is, and it is the absolute nature that is being displayed in our minds. So the way I thought of it was that all things and phenomena are possible. And that's the prophecy. All things are possible. But all things are empty. All things are emptiness. They're all appearances, but yet they're all there you know, for us to be able to enjoy, or to be able to find that they are sources of suffering for ourselves. And so through the experience of the enlightenment, we begin to make choices of what it is that we are, that we attach to, that we cling to, etc., or that we're able to release and let go. So, so the attainment of prophecy meant for me of being able to see that everything that is here now has always been here now and will always be in the future, what we call future. So it is, you know, omnipresent, it is omnidirectional, it is timeless, etc. So that to me, yes, Debbie.
I was gonna say, time isn't real.
Right.
Time is just a product of what we're sitting in. And everything might have already happened, which is another discussion, has to do with relativity. But you're right that it's not. No, I'm just agreeing with what you're saying, but yeah, time's not real.
So I think fundamentally these two acceptances of the bodhisattva is to recognize that it is the mind that is experiencing all of this. The mind is phenomenal. The mind is temporary, and it's the mind is the device that we use in order to be able to have an intellectualization of this and so on. I think we can say that there is a heart mind that doesn't have all these brain thoughts, is not tied to all these references of words and mnemonics and things like that. It is just pure love. And what we call pure love, and that has to be experienced, that it is, as we've said many times, an experiential, you know, or enlightenment of the heart mind, and to be able to experience things through the heart, to be able to recognize that. So this acceptance, these two acceptances, I think, speak to that in a much broader way of looking at that. And, you know, the invitation is for all of us to engage in as much meditation as we can, as deeply as we can, as long as we can, and to have that moment of that kind of experience. And then all of a sudden, everything falls into place. You say, oh, there it is. And all the wise people that you may have met over the years, or that you will meet today, or that you'll meet tomorrow, you know, will all tell you that it came in a moment like that. We worked up to it. We worked up to it. We built up to it. We had to go through a process to be able to get there. But when it comes just very, very quickly. And then it goes just as quickly in the beginning. But it gives you that confidence that, oh yes, now I know. Now I know what it is. Now I know where it is. I know how I got there. And because of my proclivities for grasping and holding and want to be able to intellectualize it, I allowed myself to be pulled out of that moment. But as we become more adept at the practice of meditation, we're able to develop that one-pointed mindfulness stability to be able to stay in that mindset for a much longer period of time. Any comments? Okay. And we're coming to 4.34.
I'm sorry, Lance.
Yes, Alex.
Sorry, I had a problem with the phone. I think I would like, it occurred to me, like we could bring it into some interesting context. As you said, the timelessness and using the heart, being in the moment, that seemed to kind of bring mind into state of not elaborating but kind of seeing directly how things are and how they will be. So if one get into this kind of clear mind state, it's naturally comes that you can make prophecy. You can see what is going to happen. So you will attain this prophecy, as they say, because like you're not, we are not getting attached and grasped by concepts. You know, we're just seeing impatiently the way things are and the way things going to be. I mean, I hope that makes sense.
Yes, and that's how we said the prophecy is being able to see the possibilities of everything happening, of all things happening. If we can imagine it, you know, it can happen. You know, whether we want it to happen or not is another story, but it's all here now, and it's always been here, and it will continue to be here in this ocean of suffering. You know, this phenomenal nature. So to be able to, as I was trying to say, to be able to conceptualize that, or rather be able to contextualize that, that's the right word, to contextualize that, we need to have it in the context of the meditation experience. Then you realize that that's where it comes from. In other words, you're not going to intellectualize your way into this. You're going to meditate your way into this. You're going to let go of the mental process the brain mental process, and open up to the natural heart mind process.
Yes, that's what I was thinking along those lines.
Okay, so this next point is 4.34, and 4.34 has three main verses to it. So to me, it's verse 107, verse 108, and I've said it's been verse 109. You know, they said in the text that it's 108 verses, but with this I count 109. But that doesn't mean a whole lot. It's just a way to be able to reference it, that's all. You know, but 107, so what this refers to, what these three verses are referring to, and not in a linear way, but what they are referring to is the ground, the path, and the fruition. So if we can use those three words and have some vague idea maybe of what that means to us, but now be able to examine these three verses with the concept of the ground, path, and fruition, it may start gelling into something that we can understand a little bit better. So this first one is the ground of non-returning is a gateway to the light of Dharma, for it leads to the complete perfection of the entirety of the Buddha Dharma. The ground of non-returning. So what does that mean to you?
It's the Tathagata state, the realization of bodhicitta. This is something we were talking about a couple of days ago. Somebody, like we read it, we were reading about it, that when you get to that point, you're never going to go back to being an ordinary being. Once you pass that state, you're always past it.
Yeah, I think so. And as we've been saying, you know, the phenomenal intelligence that we had, the phenomenal tools of our senses and everything that we're experiencing this phenomenal nature with, all this stuff and everything, all has this this graduated path of experience and expectation and development, cultivation, and so on like that. But then, soon as we have that moment of absolute awareness, where the intellectual mind meets the spiritual mind, the heart mind, that all of a sudden the whole Buddha Dharma becomes revealed. You know, how stable we are in that is questionable, but that's what the experience is. We're seeing the whole Buddha Dharma. Gary, you had your hand waving. Did you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to say to me, the emptiness, it means that we are not swept about by the storm of life. Doesn't mean that we're indifferent to it or indifferent to other people's suffering at all. But what I learned in life, which was not good, and I think what most people learn, is you get sucked into the vortex of suffering and become a participant in it. Sometimes in our solution-bound society, we remedy suffering with more suffering. We remedy problems with more problems. Sometimes finding that quiet center in our meditative mind leads to more peace than all the remedies that we claim to be the answer. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but that's...
Well, no, I think that's right. And knowing that that's possible, that there is this ground of no returning, non-returning, that, you know, you're going to forever be changed. You're never going to go back to where you were because you've just blasted through that. You've experienced something that can never be taken away from you. You know, the analogy we always use is the sugar cube, or putting your hand on the stove, or having a sexual experience or something like that, you know. And it's something that once you have that kind of experience, that kind of bliss, that kind of pain, whatever, that there's a no returning to not knowing it. There's a gnosis, and you can't forget it. It's always there. So this, in its purest sense, is the non-returning of the experience of the Buddha Dharma. That absolute ultimate nature is the Buddha Dharma. And seeing that all this is a display of that. So we're talking about the ground here. The next one, 107, says, 108 says, the wisdom that evolves from ground to ground is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to being empowered with the wisdom of omniscience, of ground to ground. And this is one of the great things about, you know, what we're able to do with our gift of life, is to be able to experience all the different Buddhas, all the different awakened ones, is all within ourselves. We have that, you know, it's all a matter of, you know, am I the Buddha of healing? Am I the Buddha of compassion? Am I the Buddha of wisdom? Am I the Buddha of fearlessness? You know, what qualities do I have that I can express in my activities and so on? And how do I take that, you know, from one situation to another, from one ground to another? You find out that it's all the same ground, but we may be approaching it from going from one ground to another. One deity yoga practice may be one ground. We do another deity yoga, there's another ground. We do a third one and there's another one. And then, but we find out that it all becomes the same ground. It's all the same. And we begin to recognize that indestructible diamond within our heart center. That metaphor that we use is all within ourselves. So the wisdom that evolves from this ground to ground, we talk about the 5 Dharani Buddhas, the 5 wisdom Buddhas, and each one of them has a particular, point of view, has a particular wisdom that we're going for. But within a perfectly realized Buddha, they're all there. And we're breaking it apart, just like if I shine light through this crystal, it'll break down the light spectrum into Roy G. Biv. But right now it just all looks, completely the same. There's no difference to any of it. It just looks clear. But within that are all these different aspects to it and so on. So the wisdom that evolves from ground to ground is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to being empowered with the wisdom of omniscience. Omniscience. What does omniscience mean? It's 2 basic Greek words, omni and psi, science, psi. Omni means all, right? And psi means to know. So literally putting that together, it's all-knowing. Omniscience is seeing all things, recognizing all things, being able to do all things, the omniscience of our true nature. Our bound up, compounded nature is very focused on one thing or another at a time. But as an awakened one, everything is happening simultaneously, and there's no need to have to focus at all. Any comments on that? Yes, Tonga.
This is not specifically to what you were just saying, but related. Do you think it would be fair to also understand these 3 grounds, the ground, the path, and the fruition, in terms of the 3 bodies of the Buddha, the Nirmanakaya, the Sambodhakaya, and the Dharmakaya?
Yes, absolutely. That I think we say the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So the Dharma is the mind of is the teaching, is the voice of the Buddha, is the speech of the Buddha, is the Dharma itself. The mind of the Buddha is the Dharmakaya, is the absolute nature that we're referring to, that Buddha Dharma that we're referring to, that's non-conceptual. But then it materializes in ways that has a display to it that we can intellectualize it through the speech of the Buddha, through the Dharma, and through the emanation body, which is the Nirmanakaya of the Buddha, the physical presence of the holy being, of the being that through this object, through this human being who's able to convey this so that we can see it, we can hear it, we can see them, we can touch them, that we can listen to them, and so on like that, that is another vehicle, that's another display of that Dharmakaya, making it real for ordinary people to be able to understand it. So the fruition would be the mind of the Buddha, would be the Dharmakaya.
That's what I was thinking. The ground would be the historical Buddha that all this teaching.
The Nirmanakaya,
right?
Nirmanakaya. The body of the Buddha.
Yeah, and then the
Sambhogakaya is all the meditational stuff.
Yeah,
all the meditation Buddhas, and the Bodhisattvas are all meditational. They're not, human beings. They're human beings. Human beings become the embodiment of what they represent. They are representative of elevated, evolved spiritual thought and process. Does that make sense? Does that sound right to you? Trying to define what the Sambhogagaya is.
Yes, that makes sense to me. I can appreciate the that idea of the three grounds in that category of the three bodies of the Buddha, in the path and the fruition, the ground, the path, and the fruition. I can see how that kind of fits neatly into those three categories as well.
So if we look at it from the bottom up, here's our ground. We're on this ground. And then we're exposing ourselves to this pathway, which is the articulation, which is the verbalization, which is the teaching of all this in symbolic language, using different meditational Buddhas and so on like that, to be able to help us to understand these purification concepts and so on. So we start off on this ground in our human body. We're starting to develop that other 85% of our brain power to be able to understand this meditative hooking, ourselves to the deity and binding ourselves to it and locking ourselves up to it. And then comes the happiness factor, which is the fruition of that, which is actually becoming the Buddha. When we realize that we are the Buddha, that we have that within ourselves, and that we're able to stabilize it through the process of being on the ground, using the path, and then the fruition, and then we find that we were there the whole time. But we just didn't recognize it. We couldn't stabilize it. We couldn't have the one-pointed mindfulness. We were always being interrupted by our emotions and our ego and all the confusion that happens around us and so on. But through these things that we're learning to be able to develop one-pointed mindfulness so that we can have that experience, and that becomes the result. And that once we do that, like I said before, we're forever changed. I've never been the same since I realized that. So just as you've had many experiences of pain or of bliss that can never be taken away from you, this experience of union with spirituality is something that is possible. That is part of the prophecy that we were just talking about a few minutes ago. The prophecy is that it's there.
I would add to that there is a danger to trying to solidify your understanding. And if you grasp onto your understanding and you don't allow it to grow with experience, then that's another mistake that you can make.
Well, that's true. And that's why if I used the word, if the word solidify came out, that was wrong. It should have been stabilize. Well, we're stabilizing the clear light. Because as we are going through the Sambhogagaya, there's references to light, where all the language all comes down into rays of light. So the 5 Dhyani Buddhas are the conveyors of this light. So Ashkobhya is the blue light. Ratnasambhava is the yellow light. The red light is Amitabha. The green light is Amagog City. And the white light is Varanchana. They're all great, all powerful, all have incredible meaning to them and so on. But the clear light is what we're trying. They come from, and they go back to, they emanate from the clear light. And that's what we're trying to stabilize, not solidify, but be able to be spacious as the clear light. The pristine cognition is the way it's explained in the Bardo Todol. The pristine cognition. before it's born, unborn, remains unborn, undying, omnipresent. And that's the bardo of reality.
When, on Saturday, Yeshua Rampa said many, many interesting things. But as he was talking about this, I thought, we talk about knowledge and wisdom, and, there's kind of, in a sense, two different types. Knowledge about things. There's knowledge that's external to you, right? The Dharma and that wisdom, the realization of the Four Noble Truths, that's not separate from you, right? I'm still trying to figure out this idea because I think it's useful. But a lot of the knowledge that we have is knowledge of something that's not us, it's the world around us. Not that we, can't learn, we definitely learn, and we reason and we think. But, as you're saying, it never leaves you. That wisdom that we're accumulating is not separate from us. That's the thing that changes us. That's the wisdom recognizing what we really are.
Well, I think we have to look, the knowledge may be the knowledge of the phenomenal nature, which is relative. And by its nature, it's incomplete. But it's the absolute knowledge or the absolute wisdom, the absolute nature that issues that forth. It comes from there, and that is but a display of that absolute ultimate nature that we're using those words for, that is complete. So how can I say that? Is it printed in a book someplace? But I can say that, there is a glimpse of that. You can experience that. And then you see the fragmentation of the phenomenal nature. You see that there's knowledge of this part of it, there's knowledge of that part of it. And together, we call that some degree of wisdom, but it's a limited wisdom because you're not seeing it all. But from the point of view of the Dharmakaya, of the mind of the Buddha, it all comes from that.
And again, it's that chain, as Kagyu was saying, Nirmanakaya, Sambhoga, like our meditational deities, our protectors. They were all people at one point. They were actual people. Right? Avalokiteshvara was somebody. And they're still out there right here. But that is they're embodying that they made that transition, and they're out there waiting for us. But it's real.
Well, I look at it as a dimensional awareness. How literal we can take it is maybe our obscuration of wisdom. That we can know that. To think that we can know that.
Well, they're very available,
They're very available, but we become the embodiment of that. Yes, they are embodied in human beings, but but it was enlightened human beings who were able to recognize that. And then they communicate it to other human beings. To say that there's other human beings that are out in space or something like that in the same form that we are, I think I would I would question that.
I would question that too. That's not what I said.
Okay.
That's right.
Well, you said that they were human beings before.
At once. I mean, Avalokiteshvara was actually a person. Right? They were disciples of Buddha.
They had names, yes, they had names, and I'm not a scholar, so I can't go into that. I'll let somebody else have that discussion. All I know is that we can experience that for ourselves. We can be Avalokiteshvara. We can be Manjushri. We are all those deities within ourselves. Who brought it forth? Who said it first? To me, it doesn't make a difference. We're reading the sutras to try and understand it at the source level for our experience on this planet. This is a system for us to be able to understand, that which otherwise could not be understood. Or it would take another system like this. And there's the Christian system, there's the Judeo-Christian system, there's the Hindu system and so on, which are trying to explain the very same things. So it may not be a definitive answer for you, but in preparation for tonight, I went and I was reading through the introduction to this book again. And I've read this book and this introduction several times. And it says in there, look, this is just a way for us to be able to capture some things that are very, very, very subtle. And we do the best job we can and able to do that. But the experience is your meditation. So to remind yourself of putting this into that context, read the introduction again. These things are not meant to be read one time and forgotten. So let me go to the next one here, which is verse 109, which now I call the manifestation. The manifestation of the ground, the path, and the fruition. It says, the ground of empowerment is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads one to be conceived in the womb, to be born, to manifest in the world, to undergo austerities, to go to the seat of awakening, to tame Mara, to attain complete awakening, to turn the wheel of Dharma, and to manifest great parinirvana. In other words, to have your play in full. So each of us has a different life. We have many similarities. We have the same tools to work with, but at the same time, the way in which we engage is very dependent on karma, proclivities, all these different things, conditions. It really comes down to causes and conditions, and then the karma that we engage in, the action that we take, and then the result of that is really what it all comes down to. And that's what differentiates us. So this ground of empowerment. So when we are empowered to have this life, we gave ourselves this gift to be born again. When we talk about the Bardo Todal, the liberation by hearing, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this process that human beings, that all beings go through in order to have a life as we know it, and then go through a death period, then go into what we call the Bardo of reality, and then to be reborn again. And then to continue that migration through these transferences of consciousness. It becomes, there's a language there, there's a study there that this becomes, you have a way of being able to contextualize this intellectually and so on. But still it needs to be experientially, it needs to be experienced through the meditation. And the thing about it is that we've had this experience many, many, many times. Where were you before you were born? Where do you go when you die? Well, here is a system to try to help articulate that. This is the empowerment. We have given ourselves the gift of this life to be here right now, to be able to be talking about these things, rather than being, you can imagine any other place on the planet that you might want to be or that you don't want to be, and you're glad you're not there now. That you've evolved to the point of being where you are now. That's why we say that we're much closer to enlightenment. We're already enlightened, we just don't recognize it. The only thing that's keeping us from it is that sliver of our attachment to our ego and to our emotions and all that kind of stuff. We have to cut through that and then cross over the opening. So we're much closer to it than you might think. So going back to this, it says, leads one to be conceived in the womb, to be a sentient being, a human being, to be born, to manifest in the world, to undergo austerities, rather than all the complexities of our life, to have an austere life, to cut ourselves off from all those attachments, to go to the seat of awakening, which means the meditation seat, the meditation cushion, to tame Mara, those demons within ourselves that are our worst enemies, our own ego, our own attachments, etc., to gain complete awakening, to have those moments of epiphany, of clear light, to turn the wheel of Dharma, to see that there is a pathway and that we are on this pathway and we are the ones who are turning our own wheel of Dharma. We're either stopping it or we're turning it. We're turning it forward, we're turning it backward. We're the ones who are turning it. And to manifest great parinirvana. So the great parinirvana is the liberation. That we cease our materialization into this form body, into this world, into this samsara, into this physicality, that has this intellectual aspect to it. That we become pure spirit that has no body as we understand a physical body. Is the parinirvana, never to return. Returns in ways that are beyond human comprehension. We think we can imagine this, and we use metaphors to try and help us to do it, but it's beyond that. And I think that's what Debbie was talking about a little while ago. So then the next paragraph after this, it says, these friends are known as the 108 gateways, or 109 gateways to the light of the Dharma, which a bodhisattva must teach to the assembly of gods at the time of his passing. So remember, this whole part of the sutra is Buddha Shakyamuni as a bodhisattva who has not been born yet, who is in Tushita heaven, and is teaching the gods of what it is to be born on the planet Earth, ultimately we can say that, and he's preparing them for that. He's prepared himself for this. And now he's preparing the other bodhisattvas and the gods in particular for they're going to be with him, you see. And it's allegory, So monks, when the bodhisattva taught this chapter, monks, when the bodhisattva taught this chapter, the gateways to the light of the Dharma, out of the assembly of gods, 84,000 gods gave rise to the mind of unexcelled, perfect, and complete awakening. The 32,000 gods who had previously been trained gained acceptance that phenomena are non-arising. The 360 million gods gained the pure eye of regarding phenomena, unblemished and untainted. The entire fine realm of the heavens of joy was covered knee-deep in celestial flowers. Monks, at this time, the Bodhisattva uttered these verses in order to bring even more joy to the assembly of gods. So this is the next couple pages, and I'd love to read them right now. Would you like me to read them, or do you want to wait until the next time when we can read these? But they're words of affirmation. They're words of confidence. They're words of inspiration that have been laid out for us in these 108, 109 verses of the gateways to the Dharma. Do you want to have a discussion, or should I read this and then we can discuss?
I kind of like to hear it or.
What was that?
I'd kind of like to hear it or read it, but I can
Okay.
read it out for sure. Whatever people want to do. I
Do
think
you
I'm
need some
sorry
help
if I interrupted
reading
you.
it? You need some of us to share.
Let me read it because I've read it all before, and
Okay.
and I can punctuate it. That thespian aspect of my
Dorje,
Yes, sir.
maybe we could go round and each of us read a section. Start with the first and each person read one section.
I appreciate that, and having done this many times, different times with different situations like this, I think people get more out of it with one voice going all the way through it, because when it gets fragmented, the stream of consciousness gets lost, I think. So forgive me for saying that if it upsets anybody, but we can do it this way this time, and we can do it another time where everybody gets a turn to do parts of it and so on like that. So there's many ways to do it. Let's do it this way for now. And I think, and please try and close your eyes and listen to what the words are, or follow along. I'm going to go sort of slowly, so you have a moment with each phrase, each sentence, for the meanings, for you to have a visualization in your mind's eye of what this might be. All right, so everybody get in a comfortable position, get ready to follow the book, either by following the pages or by mentally listening and one-pointed mindfully and not thinking of other things and so on. At that time, the guide, the lion of men, passes away and descends from the supreme realm of the heaven of joy. He proclaims these words to the gods: abandon all forms of mindlessness, the multitude of divine pleasures, all wonderful things conjured up by the mind. All of this is caused by virtuous actions. So listen now to learn about these actions. Acknowledge the kindness done to you. Do not fall back into the 3 lower realms after exhausting your previous stores of merit. There is only unhappiness and suffering there. Once you develop respect for me, apply yourselves earnestly to practicing the teachings that you have heard, and you will inevitably attain boundless joy. All desirable things are impermanent and unstable. Nothing is eternal, not even the eons. Everything is like a mirage or an illusion, and as fleeting as lightning or a water bubble. The pleasure brought about by these qualities of desirable things is as unsatisfying as drinking salt water. But those with noble, pristine knowledge that transcends the world are satisfied. Goddesses, companions, and beautiful songs are like the audience of a play. They are like a crowd of people who assemble and then go their own separate ways. In the realm of the conditioned, there are no allies, no friends, no relatives, and no retinue. And besides, the karma that results from good deeds also binds one and ever follows behind one's back. Therefore, be harmonious with one another. Act with a loving and benevolent mind. Engage in wholesome activities, for actions done well bring no torment. Please recall the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and do not slip into heedlessness. Those who delight in study, discipline, and generosity are endowed with patience and gentleness. Investigate suffering, impermanence, and lack of self. Examine these 3 phenomena thoroughly. They occur in connection to causes and conditions. They are void of life and have no owner. Whatever miraculous powers you see in me, and whatever eloquence, wisdom, and qualities I may have, all of this is caused by virtuous deeds arising from study, discipline, and conscientiousness. For the welfare, benefit, and love of sentient beings, you should emulate me with your discipline, study, conscientiousness, generosity, restraint, and self-control. For you will not be able to accomplish the auspicious teachings by the mere sound of your voice and speech. Please adopt the right conduct and practice what you teach. Do not simply follow what other people say. Exert yourself with continuous concentration. When acting, one takes the opportunity. Without acting, one does not accomplish anything. Recall all the suffering you have experienced, circling through cyclic existence until now. If you fall prey to distortions, nirvana and freedom from attachment will not be achieved. For having now obtained freedom, a spiritual guide, and a conducive environment, and having met with the superior teachings of Dharma, you should pacify attachment and the other afflictions. Freed from pride, arrogance, and conceit, always flexible, upright, and honest. Dedicate yourself to reaching the transcendence of suffering and apply yourself to realizing the path. Disperse all the darkness and turbidity of ignorance with the lamp of knowledge. Tear the net of error with its latencies, using the vajra of wisdom. What need is there to say many things? It is in your interest to follow this teaching. If you do not abide by this teaching, then it is not the fault of the teaching. when I attain awakening and shower down the teaching that leads to immortality, you who have pure minds should come and listen to the true Dharma. This concludes the 4th chapter on the gateways to the light of the Dharma. So, Kunga, what does that mean to you?
It sounded to me very similar to the 37 activities of the bodhisattva. Just dedicating your life to the Dharma.
Which came first?
Which came first?
Yeah.
You mean historically written? I have no idea.
Historically.
Yeah, I mean, are you asking me the question of which came first, the 37
Right.
attributes of bodhisattva or this text? I don't know historically what which was written first.
Well, by definition, isn't the sutras, isn't this the teachings of the Buddha himself that was, written down, that was memorized and uttered over and over again through generations, and then finally written down, several hundred years after the Buddha, and that the way of the bodhisattva didn't come until 1,000 years later.
That's true. I think that this particular sutra was discovered later. When I think about the sutras that come out of the Theravadian tradition, they're much simpler. I think historically that, as far as, what scholars actually think what was written down and what came later, as far as later understanding, I think this is a later understanding, but I don't think that matters that much. I think these are inspirational teachings. I think those are inspirational words to practice. I like the idea of this imagery of the Buddha sitting up there, telling his audience, this is why you should practice, kind of like a football coach giving the team the big speech right before they go out at halftime to win the game, that sort of like pump everybody up, that kind of thing. I like that. That's how it sort of strikes me, is that here's what you need to do, now go do it. It's like a very inspirational type of setting us forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Would somebody else like to comment about what this meant to them? Zara, can I impose on you?
You absolutely can always impose on me. I may not be, I may not be what people want to hear. I will give you, I was just moved by your recitation of it. I almost was moved to tears, honestly. I was just,
Sorry it was that bad.
no, I was inspired. I've been having a rough couple of days, revisiting some human emotional stuff, and just listening to you recite that was almost like chicken soup for the soul, if that makes sense. Like it just hit a spot that it's like I needed to hear that tonight. Last night was hard for me. Like I went to bed crying. It's just stuff, just stuff that comes up that our brain has to just recycle, like relational stuff and all that jazz. And hearing that, gosh, that just inspired me. Like I was just like, okay, and I don't know, I needed that, and that's how it landed for me tonight. That's probably not necessarily what if you wanted more of an academic response. I'm giving you more of a heart response right now. Because of everything I'm going through right now, I try to be as candid with the Sangha as possible because everything is so real for me. And some of the things that Bernie and Kanga just said about if you rush the process of the conceptualization ahead of the experiential, you can't get too far ahead of those, because then you could end up harming your spiritual journey. And I also needed to hear that tonight, because I feel like that really hit me. So Thank you. Thank you for reciting that. I get that really, thank you. I don't really have much more to add. Like from a conceptual piece, it's all true for me. And then from my heart mind, I'm just like, wow.
Well, I think that is the point, the heart mind.
Yeah, it just hit, it's uplifting. I wish you could like read that every night to me. Like I could have like an earbud and you'd be like, everything's gonna be okay, little human spirit. Just keep just keep going. So just, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to say I can't claim credit for anything that was said tonight because so far I haven't said a single word. I was in my Spanish class until a little after 8. So, but as far as the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva, that was written by Nulchen Togme, and it was sometime after Milarepa lived, but I think before the first Dalai Lama, so it's in that period between 1000 AD and 1500 AD. The Bodhicharya Vatara, the path of a bodhisattva, I guess you would translate that as the actions that how do we translate
The ways of the Bodhisattva, I thought.
Ways of the Bodhisattva.
Yeah.
It really means the course of the Bodhisattva or something like
I've
that.
seen it as the path of the Bodhisattva.
The path of the course of the Bodhisattva. That was written by Shantideva, and that was written somewhere around 800 or 900 AD. And the Lalitavistara, it's generally considered a Mahayana sutra, so it was written down sometime between the birth of Christ and 500 AD, probably. If you want to get the dates for all these things correct. I don't remember specifically when the Lalitavistara was written. I believe it's fairly early, so it's probably sometime around the birth of Christ, but I'm not certain of that. I mean, if anybody considers this,
Which was 300 years or so after the passing of the Buddha.
Right. It's a fairly early text written down. And it's of course there were various attempts because most of the early sutras really are just records of his talks, and there's no real account of his life. The Lalitavistara was an attempt to provide an account of his life. In the same way we have the Gospels in Christianity, that wasn't originally part of the Buddhist sutras, but they felt it was important to give an account of the life of the Buddhas fairly early. And okay, so that's all I know about the Lalitavistara. Generally, Pete knows a good bit about this stuff more than I do, but I don't see him here tonight. So,
well, thank you. I'd like to ask, how does this land on you? Zara was very.
Well, it's interesting that the Mahayana. Okay. Another word for the sutras are generally considered Mahayana. We haven't really gotten any Mahayana material in this quite yet. It's all strictly early Buddhism, but it's Vaipulya, which means extensive. So generally, my joke about that is that the Mahayana sutras are pages and pages of past participles. If you look at late Sanskrit, they like to, instead of writing in complete sentences, they like to write participial phrases. So it has that quality that they just, if they can say it 1 time, it's better to say it 10 times. So we have this very extensive list of 108 gates of the Dharma, which is fine. It's wonderful because we're considering everything in great detail. But it's a lot to remember 108 different ways to get to the Dharma. And so it's fine. It's the style of these sutras to examine everything at great length. And that's the quality that a lot of these Mahayana sutras have. And it's both wonderful in one sense, and in another sense, sometimes you prefer to have something a little more direct and succinct. And that's why, even in later Buddhism, you have the commentaries, which are much shorter, such as the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, which summarizes all the sutras. So we go from short to long to short again, which I guess is kind of the cycle of life. And here we got the long part. I don't know. Am I making sense? That's my opinion of all
All right, well,
this.
let's leave time for somebody else to speak. So thank you. Matt, could you, how did this land on you?
Very similar to what Kungo was saying. Like at the end, it had a kind of football coach at halftime in the championship kind of like feel to me or something like that or like effect on me. It was inspiring and yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the best way I could describe the way it made me feel or my reaction to it when hearing it. Yeah.
Alexander, how about you? What would you, how did this land with you?
Thank you. I don't know if I can express it concisely, but I just want to say that it's kind of interesting that this whole, first of all, it is, a lot of profound instructions that not only gods, but humans can easily absorb and put into action, I guess. And I guess the whole point is to not just to keep talking, but to do things right. And it's interesting that it's addressed to the gods, and we as humans kind of hearing that what is being instructed to gods, and I guess it inspires us to well, we can tell ourselves, well, look, we can do this probably just as well as the gods could do, and get the same benefits as the gods could do. So it keeps attention and keeps kind of like instead of think about like if that would be told, okay, you should do that, you little humans. You should do that. It will be totally kind of different attitude as opposed to when this is a kind of instruction to the gods of the universe, and we may be on the way to becoming those gods, or maybe we don't have to become gods. We may go straight to parinirvana. So a shortcut bypass. Save us some time and suffering and whatnot. As we know, gods have their own suffering as well. So a lot of profound things and a lot of things to kind of absorb and digest.
Thank you. Very good. Yes, relating it, that this being addressed to the gods, that's very good to keep in mind. Thank you.
The other thing it made me think was some of kind of similar to like the four thoughts that turned the mind to the Dharma with things related to like precious human birth, I guess is kind of ironic that it made me think that now. You mentioned the thing with the gods, but of like you have this opportunity that these teachings are present. I'm going to come and I'm going to shower these teachings down. And if you don't follow them, it's not the teaching's fault. It's like you got to take responsibility. That's the other part I got. It was kind of part of the football speech, kind of part of it I got. It's like you can do this or not, but you're you can follow the teachings or not, but it's up to you to do it. You know, kind of your salvation is up to you.
Thank you. Debbie, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, you know, it is beautiful, but it's all familiar. And Bernie hit on why. It's the commentaries. You know, as you're reading these things, I've got a bookshelf here that are filled with the analysis of these. These are seminal texts, right? And there are things I can look at and I say, oh yes, you know, Kenshin Konchak, he made this point, or Kampo Samdup, or Drupal Tingling Nimpo. You know, I have notebooks of stuff, and that's really the beauty of looking at these things. Because, you know, when you study Buddhism, you just start where everybody else is. And we're not reading, you know, these sutras in you know, we have little bits of them, as Bernie said in the commentary. They'll take, you know, sections and then, you know, spend a few pages unpacking things. So yeah, it's it all links together.
Thank you. Gary, how about you?
Well, when I read these sutras and listen to you recite them, the words phenomena, emptiness, refuge pass through my mind as I'm like all of us. I'm watching the world go by, and the world is not very pretty now. And these passages and our practices help me to find way to rise above and turn away the storm that swirls around all of us. We can't prevent that from happening. We have to accommodate it somewhere in our spirit somehow. And that's what these sutras are. Tools. The word tools may be too coarse a word to use, but they provide a pathway through that storm for me. And listening to them over and over and over again helps me to come back to center when the things that happen, you know, things that I hear and see would pull me away. That's what they do for me.
Well, very good. Thank you. So I think taking these, you know, we could spend time next time taking these apart and talking more about them. If you think that's what you want to do, if that's necessary, or continue and move on to the next chapter, we can do that too, either way. But even if you decide to move on to the next chapter, I think, you know, if you're not spending time with this or any of the other books that we talk about and reading these at your own pace and thinking about them, contemplating, meditating and everything, I think is what the meaning of this is. You know, the words aren't going to jump off the page and land into your heart until you bring them in yourself, you know. So, you know, I get very, you know, on the verge of emotion myself, you know, when I read these things, and the Buddha is talking to us all, you know, very personally, and as if, you know, I could find words within my heart to try and explain what it is that is here, you know. I'm thankful that I have these things here because I can't do it as well as put forth in these teachings and these sutras and in these practices and so on. So you know, so it's very, very meaningful to myself. Kunga, I see you got your hand up.
Yes, so I wanted to suggest two things. One, if we're voting on how we're going to cover this rest of this chapter, I would feel like it would be beneficial to discuss the section that you just read bit by bit, just like we discussed the 108 Dharma gates. So that I thought that was very helpful, and I could feel like approach to this section would also be helpful in a similar way. The other thing I wanted to share was we had talked about earlier in the night, talked about Dharanis and how a single short mantra or sutra kind of gives you a clue to a larger sutra. So when I read this the first time, it reminded me of a very short statement from Dogen, who's one of the founder of Soto Zen. And so I just wanted to share that, just like a couple of sentences. The path to enlightenment is an easy one. Do no harmful actions. Do not be attached to the cycle of birth and death. Show kindness. Respect the old and have compassion for the young. Do not have a heart that rejects or a heart that covets, and have no worry or sadness in your heart. This is what is called enlightenment. Do not seek it elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What is that from, Kunga?
Well, I memorized it a long time ago. I think it comes from A Rain in a Dewdrop, which is a short commentary and translation of some of Dogen's writings from Shobe Genzo, the True Dharma Eye. But I couldn't tell you exactly where this particular translation comes from. I think it comes from that, the Moon in a Dewdrop. I think it comes from that text. But there are other variations of that saying by Dogen, and I believe that the actual text is in the Shobe Genzo, but that's huge, so it's hard to find it within there.
Thank you.
Well, this is the main body of our Monday night group. So you want to have a show of hands, would you like to go and explore, some of the inner meaning of some of these words and phrases that are used in this Dharani of the Buddha, this instruction? Would you like to do that? Or would you like to move on to the next chapter? So who would like to move on to the next chapter? Who would like to go back and explore this a little bit more and flesh out meaning and so on? Okay.
You mean do you mean chapter 4, getting more involved in chapter 4, moving on to chapter 5?
Well, that's the choice, so starting at 4.36 and what we just read tonight, and carrying on, but going through each stanza and breaking down each stanza a little bit more, because there's references to things that we might have missed that a discussion will bring out. Or just say, okay, I had enough of this, let's go to the next chapter.
My vote. Sorry.
Yes, I don't know who's speaking, but well, I think we had a show of hands. I think we're going to stay with chapter 4 and go through this Dharani, this speech or whatever you want to call it, and talk about that. So we'll do that next time. But I would also like to say that and get your opinions on this. We've been doing Noble Film Night now for, 6 months or more or something like that on Friday nights. And we chose Friday night because it just seemed to be, when we discussed it, that was the best night that we could do it for the most number of people and so on. And the people at home have been very, very, very interested in what we've done and so on. And but I think it's, there's been a great missed opportunity, to learn, from these different films that we've had. They've been really great teaching tools and understanding the culture and understanding different aspects of Buddhism and so on. So if Monday night is our best night to be able to be together like we are, what do you think about taking a few Monday nights and using a few of these films and concentrating on these films instead of the books and everything, and just watching these films together as we do, these talks and everything. Do you think that's a good idea? Or do you think it's a bad idea and we should continue with the books?
No, I think I love that. I love that you mix up the modalities because, like, I feel like there's so many time constraints in our Western lifestyles. So, like, if getting more involvement and you getting more dissemination of these great films right now needs to be Monday, that sounds great, Lance. So you can mix it up like once every 4 weeks, have like a focus film each month that you curate for us where it maybe resonates with whatever content. Maybe there's some application or some part like symmetry with the content as well, because like that'll give you more time to be thoughtful about the selection that could lead into more engaging discussion. I love that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Kunga, you have your hand up.
Yes, I like the idea because I don't have another night free, so I can't take part in the films generally on Friday. I guess I would suggest that, like Zara said, that maybe once a month you do the film, and also maybe just show an hour of the film and then leave the hour for discussion of the film. So, maybe you watch half that, maybe one Monday you watch the first hour and then have time afterward to discuss what we just saw. And then the next Monday you watch the second hour. I don't know, maybe that's not good to split the films up like that, but that's just a thought. Thanks.
All right. Well, that's a suggestion I hadn't thought about, breaking up one film into 2 sessions. Not a bad idea. I'll think about that.
Lance, when you do
Yeah, I like this suggestion. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Lance, when you do the film, can we like share the screen and project it onto our TV? I know I can.
Oh, absolutely. And I was going to suggest if you use a laptop or whatever, and you can connect your television through the HDMI connector, you know how to do that.
Well, you use
great.
the share screen icon, don't you? I mean,
No, you just use your.
I do it with my phone. I know I could do it with my phone. So, but
Well, I don't know how it would work with the phone, but if you do it with your computer, I know it'll work that way. So, if you can take this Zoom that we're on right now, and if you can put it up on your TV, that's what you need to do. Everything else we'll just screen share that film. That's what we've been doing on Friday nights.
well, I have a share screen icon here. I've never used. I've used my phone to do it, but I expect that this.
I would experiment with it first and see how it works. Don't wait till the last minute. But if you use
This Zoom says here that you have disabled participant screen sharing, but I guess you wouldn't do that with the movie.
Well, you're not screen sharing to other people. It's, I don't know about your TV. That's a different thing altogether.
Oh,
I'm screen sharing with you.
okay.
So you just need to connect your device to your big screen TV. So the way I do it is through an HDMI connector.
Yeah, I don't see that on the menu, but I'll figure it out.
Well, it's not on the menu. There's a port on your computer. There's a HDMI connection. And that's how you see the image. But there's a port on there that you can connect it to another monitor, your TV, and see it however big your monitor is. And the enjoyment value is very high.
Gary, if you want, I can send you like a quick video like off my iPhone and show you off my smart TV because I had to learn all this when I did public presentations. It's like once you learn it, you'll never forget it because it's so painful to learn all these cables and input systems. So it's ingrained in my memory. If that would help you, I can send you a quick video to show you.
Okay, go ahead and do that. But I think that would be helpful. But since I've done it with my phone, I think that the TV is already receptive to that sort of.
And great, then
Yeah.
I would practice with it, make sure it works the way you want it to. Okay?
Okay.
And if we need to do something in an afternoon sometime, take 20 minutes and see how it works, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, we'll get there. I mean,
All right, well, I'll have plenty of time to figure this out.
Yeah. As long as the movies permits screen sharing, then the TV ought to pick it up right away.
Well, there might be a black Ford parked out in front of my house, with 4 FBI agents in there,
Oh, they have enough to do already. I mean, God knows.
If you look at, the first part of these DVDs is the FBI warning, right?
Oh, I used to know those guys. They're busy. Don't worry. They're not worried about you.
Thank you. I'll need you as a character reference. Well, does anybody have any last things you'd like to say? We'll meet again next week and we'll digest this Dharani, this invocation from the Buddha, and we'll talk about that. But I think it's great. This past weekend we had Geshe Jampa was with us at the new temple in Baltimore, and everybody that was there was very excited about it and thought it was great. And we're going to do more things with that, and hopefully, in the not too distant future, we can schedule, a weekend or 3 or 4 days and have a retreat together. Would be really, really great, and so if you can manage your schedules to do that, we'll discuss a time that's suitable for everybody. And we finally, there's a place where we can do this, and it'll be wonderful. So that would be something that would be something we would cherish the rest of our lives, I'm sure. Each time you have one of these things are very, very special.
Lance, for retreats, do you typically just stay on site somewhere, like in lodgings at the actual temple, or do you go to a hotel, or is that just nuanced based off each site, what they have to offer?
It's what they have to offer, but the ideal thing is to all stay together, and not go home, but if you can stay together, and because the conversations you have at, over dinner or 9 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning, those are great. Those are priceless, and being with each other, lay people, being with our teachers and having those things, taking a walk in the woods together. And, those things are what I'm talking about. And have a practice, have something, a focal point that we're going to be working on, that we're going to repeat over and over again. But it's those in-between times that are like a treasure. So it would be great. And the Mandir, there's not a separate room. We wouldn't be able to have a separate room, but there's one particular room that I'm thinking of, Bernie, where that room with the red carpet, that could be like a dormitory. Everybody bring their own inflatable mattress or whatever and stay on the floor, and we just kind of make it a dormitory, and for the night. And we'll be pretty tired. Sleep won't be hard. And but there's a few rooms like that. We might be able to do that. So I'm sure that there's a great opportunity to do that. If you feel like you want to go to a hotel and somebody wants to do that, be okay too. But just to be able to have it's like going camping together or something, a spiritual camping.
Well, of course,
That sounds awesome.
we're going to have to get permission for this. I think Lance is jumping the gun. We don't have permission to do any of this yet. He's just dreaming about what might be possible.
Well, that's correct, but we have talked about it, and the people are very open to all these things what I'm suggesting.
Well, I would be wonderful if we could just have a regular practice there for some time, regular scheduled practice. That would be wonderful for me. I can see a retreat. I'm kind of old for sleeping on the floor. I'm not sure about, I like that idea, but if other people are up for it, that's fine. Sure, I've done
Well,
it before.
whatever you want to do, and to invest in an inflatable mattress is like $125.
I've still got my sleeping bag. It's stuffed underneath my bed here, and
All you need is a mattress. Get an air mattress.
well, I don't sleep well these days. That's my problem, insomnia. But I don't want to, and I snore too. My God,
Oh, well, you stayed home.
I snore something awful these days. Yeah.
Oh,
So
it keeps you up yourself, right?
it wakes me up. That's the problem. I start to fall asleep, and I
Well,
start to fall
yeah,
asleep.
because
I
this is
snore,
the
and I wake myself back up again.
well, this is the missing thing that you know, we have these meetings and these talks, which are wonderful. You know, the thing that we need to do is the practice together. That's the next
Well, yeah, I would love
ingredient.
to practice together, but I would also love to sleep in my own bed. But
All right, well, you know, we'll come over to your house and sleep in your
I've got a spare
Great at
bedroom.
Bernie's.
I could host one person, but
Bernie's
I don't
making
want to do that.
pancakes in the morning.
I make oatmeal in the morning. I make pancakes for dinner.
Arnie, you need to have a sleep study done, just like I did.
I don't know. It's
Yeah, they discovered that I stopped breathing 22 times an hour. And now
Wow.
22.
I don't think I could live
Now I
with
now
one
I
of
have
those.
this now I have
I
this
don't think I could
machine that I
sleep with
have to
one of
wear, and
those
I stop
things
breathing 2
strapped to my
times an hour.
face. I don't think I could sleep with
Yeah, you can. You think you can't, but you do. I sleep like a baby, and I sleep a lot better, and I feel a lot more rested in the day. It's
okay.
hard on your brain.
Okay.
All right,
I
brothers
was
and
just talking about
sisters.
study.
It's 9
Thank you very
o'clock. It's
much.
almost 10 o'clock for me. So.
Gary's the Umze tonight, right? Can you do the dedication prayer, please?
Let's see.
Oh, by the way, and those of you who got in the mail, along with those flyers that I sent this page, which is a corrected page of the Om Ah Hum. So you can take this and scotch tape it over the back page of the red book that you have, the prayer book, because there was a typo in here. This is the correct one, so you can just cover that one up in whatever manner you find right, glue or scotch tape or whatever. There'll be a quiz next week. Your microphone is muted.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of Yadams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara, nirvana, and the innate root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise even for a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. And through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om Ah Hum. Om Ah Hum. Om Ah Hum. May my body, speech, and mind be inseparable, body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened one, for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Lance.
Okay.
Yeah. Lance, are you going to hold the Noble Film Night this Friday, or are you going to switch to the Monday format just for my own purposes?
The Noble Film Night?
Yeah, are you going to switch formats now in June to rotating into Mondays and?
Not yet, no,
Okay.
not yet.
Okay.
We'll keep Friday night and,
Okay.
is that okay?
Oh, yeah. No, I was just curious. That's all.
Yeah, because I'm not ready to do the Monday night thing. I want to get to a point where we finish a section and then go to the film.
Got it. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Good night,
All right.
everyone.
Cheerio, bye-bye. Good night, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.